Welcome to your morning meeting, everyone. Thanks for joining. A lot going on in the world, international economic turmoil, potential and in some places anticipated Iranian strike against Israel. And Vice President Harris closes in on a deep stakes, which has confused everyone. I don't see a single person reporting with any certainty who it might be, or even with a strong feeling. We're going to talk about all three. As always, whether you're watching on YouTube or here on Two-Way, welcome to our platform for interesting, lively, calm, bipartisan conversation. Whether you're in the chat on either platform or if you're called on to speak, please have your comments in tone and substance reflect what we're trying to do here, which is to have people be able to talk to each other in a civil way without vitriol. It doesn't mean we don't have spirited conversations. If you are here on Two-Way and you'd like to get into the conversation, particularly if you're someone who's never been part of speaking up, please raise your electronic hand. We'll call on as many of you as we can. Again, please raise your hand if you do get called on. As always, tell us where you're calling from, who you're supporting in the presidential race, and then question or comment. All right, guys. Josh Shapiro may or may not be picked. I still think he's most likely, but some people tell me that's wrong. His brand has always been kind of not controversial, not divisive. That's what he's tried to be. And in Pennsylvania, that's what he's been. Now he's this figure of great controversy. First rule of vice presidential selection: do no harm. Tim, is there any way that Josh Shapiro can still be seen as a do no harm candidate, or has that Rubicon been crossed and she can't pick him if she wants to follow that basic rule?
Yeah. No, I think, well, first of all, we're in the season where now everybody is watching flights, cars, who's walking their dog, who is where, which is everyone has lost their minds at this point. Thankfully, it was just a 2-week process this time. But I do think he sustains himself as a pick that does no harm. And it's also a little bit by virtue of the fact that you compare him to what we saw with J.D. Vance, and he's got an approval rating that's minus 15. He's still a popular bipartisan governor in a swing state that probably has a big home state effect that puts him at the top of that list. He still has Republicans in that state like Dave McCormick tweeting about him, shaking his hand, doing things that bolster his image. So look, he's been at the top of the list, so he's attracted the most opposition research. We had over the weekend or on Friday some old Board of Pardons grudges come up, which is sort of fascinating in its own right. But at the end of the day, I think the picks that she has narrowed to, none of them do harm to the ticket.
Yeah, I would just say, look, at the end of the day, I would still take whatever your electoral chances. This is the one case where I would argue a vice president could probably make a difference, in that you just park them in Pennsylvania and say your only job is to try to get these 19 electoral votes. I do think, lastly, Mark, the one point that you bring up, Tim addressed this, is that his goal or his brand has always been this guy that can ascend, transcend politics, and be in the place where people need him and not make things partisan. The role of the VP is to be the attack dog and to say things that the candidate doesn't want to, et cetera. That may turn off a lot of people and not be the Josh Shapiro they know in Pennsylvania. The reason that some of these folks have said nice things about Josh, A, because he ran against Mastriano, but B, because I think he wasn't trying to be an overt partisan on a lot of things. And once you take on that role, the sort of image fades. So I would just say that I still think he would be the smartest pick electorally, but I think that people are going to be a little surprised when he plays the role that he has to play.
Yeah. Let me go back. I forgot to run through the daybook, in part because there really is almost nothing on the schedule. No public events for the current president, vice president, for Donald Trump, for J.D. Vance, at least not that we know of, for the first lady, for Doug Emhoff. The president and the vice president are scheduled to meet at 2 in private with their national security team in the sit room. But otherwise, at this point, we don't expect to see any of the principals today, which is a little bit unusual, particularly since we're not that far from Election Day. I think, and as you guys know, I think Josh Shapiro is an incredibly impressive guy. I've reported that they were on track to pick him. People in his universe still seem to think he's going to be picked. I'm not sure, and we had a Two-Way last night where this was discussed extensively. I'm not sure he's no longer a do no harm pick. I think right now, although she will take heat if he's not picked, and the party will have a lot of bitter recriminations. If he is picked, he will take heat, and I'm not sure that they have the capacity to, in Chicago with protesters, amongst other segments of the party. I'm no longer sure that even a great comms plan can tamp down how much unhappiness there is about him. An extraordinary spectacle of Fetterman basically just challenging him.
If the upside is to win, just say all your goal is to do is get those 19 electoral votes and worry about, that's the weight here, right? And I think that's
right. But what if picking him causes the convention to be a nightmare, and you have protests in the hall from delegates and alternates, and you need a good convention?
Yeah, I'll say two things. One, I just don't think that's where the Democratic Party is right now. And look, sure, is it possible? Yes, it's possible. I don't think the decision.
Tim, I'm sorry. I hate interrupting on this program.
Yeah.
I hate interrupting this program because it runs counter to our ethos. But they're calling him Genocide Josh. How can you say that's not where, quote unquote, the party is? It may not be the whole party, but there's but John Fetterman, his senator, they're each other's constituents. He's out there practically publicly saying, "Don't pick this guy because he's too self-involved." How can you say that that's not where the party is? They're going after him personally. They're going after him with opposition research. They're going after him on his religion. They're going after him on his ties to Israel. This is not a small thing. If he was in fact the front runner, and if he may be picked,
I will just say, like, look, he was clearly at the top of the pack. He has attracted a ton of opposition research in a very condensed period of time. I think it has given it a little more intensity than it will carrying forward. Look, John Fetterman, it seems like there is a personal animus there. Sometimes in politics, you take a moment and you're able to take a shot, and you do. But I don't think that is reflective, or the label being reflective of where the entire party is. But I will say there is a solution here, and that is Governor Walz. I have said
I know the Walz solution. Sean, I don't mean I have such strong feelings about this. I'm sorry to monopolize, but I'll say this: she picks him, right? And you say, all right, pick him to win Pennsylvania. The junior senator from Pennsylvania is now practically on record as saying this guy's a disaster. I know I can't think of an analog for that in my career of such a prominent other person going on the record practically and saying he's a disaster.
I'm now convinced that he's a great pick.
No, I mean, but also it's also the style of John Fetterman. Like, it is what it is. It's reflective of the person who is, slinging the arrow as well. So I think that's part of it. It's not necessarily indicative of where the party is. And to your point, yeah, it's not. You may not be able to draw a historical analog to it, but it's also hard to draw a historical analog to John Fetterman.
I would just go back to say that caveat is, again, he is known for a role. If he can't play it, which, that's going to be a problem for him in Pennsylvania as well. But, I think considering the other finalists, Mark Kelly to me would be the only other one that he's a lot more vanilla.
Yeah, I don't know if Kelly's in play or not. I've heard mixed things. Mostly my reporting is it's Walz, or it's Shapiro. I think that's the universe. Maybe Kelly, but I don't think so. And I don't think there's a big surprise. And I also know, as we've said before, the vice president is not known as a crisp decision maker when the pressure's on. And the pressure is on. It's unique pressure because no one's ever been asked to choose a running mate on this incredibly tight schedule. But she's going to have to make a great choice in a short time. Go ahead.
One last thing I'll just say is that the one thing that we've talked about a couple times before is that personal factor. She's got a relationship with Shapiro. That could be good or bad. I mean, we all hear that it's good, but I think that both what she sees in that relationship and I also think who knows what Doug Emhoff thinks, right? I mean, he's going to weigh in a little as well about the relationship there. But that X factor, that personal factor, I think is going to be something that weighs heavily, and I think it defaults to the person the longest and best.
It is. I will just say, at a personal level, it is a default of like, I'm going to have lunch with this person for the next 4 years.
I think she knows him best, but I actually don't think she knows any of the three of them. And I think the conversations yesterday, again, it's so unorthodox. All right, we could see the Middle East in war between now and November, starting this week. We could see economic turmoil pervasive, and maybe with some are now predicting a recession, maybe stagflation between now and November. That's not guaranteed. What is guaranteed is those two things are front and center on the eve of the vice president supposedly launching a national tour to the battleground states. So leaving aside the longer term possibilities, just using your comms hats and putting those on, can she launch this tour? If either or both of those stories are raging, can she still go on a big rah-rah pep rally tour, or does she have to cancel it?
I think she should and has to. I think if you were to in between now and when this tour is supposed to start tomorrow, cancel at the beginning of, a couple of bad days in the stock market. And yes, turmoil in the Middle East. I think that would spook people from a
But
communications.
what if Israel's being bombarded and starts firing back?
I mean, then there's a national security decision, but I'm just saying right now where we are, I don't think she cancels. If there is a place for her to go back to in the situation room and they have to address the situation, then yes, it's entirely possible. But I would say I lean against the likelihood that this tour is
Well,
going to be canceled.
So,
She
so
also,
I, I, I agree with Tim on this. You don't cancel, you tweak. And I think that you adjust your message and talk about why you're the right one to deal with this and use the platform to do it. You may have to add in some things, as Tim said, where you're going to fly back to Washington. But at the end of the day, no one really thinks the vice president is in charge of anything right now, except the border. We need to remind people of that.
They,
But so I do think that she has to be cognizant of public opinion and change it. I will say this though, and don't take your financial advice from me nor any other, but I think that there is the potential of a lot of this spinning a lot further out of control, both economically. We just sent the Secretary of Defense sent an aircraft carrier and a strike group out there. I mean, this is not guaranteed to be contained, both economically, what's happening in the stock market and what's happening overseas. And I think we could have a massive, I think it was Alex Castellanos that brought up the word chaos. This is the perfect storm of chaos at a critical time. I've always believed that the first week plus or minus of September is when voters make up their mind. And if they're like, this is nuts, everything around me is nuts, that bodes well for Trump. So I just, both what's going on over there and what's happening have the potential to spin out of control in a way, politically speaking, that could be extreme. That could, we've seen how many game changers in the past 21, 28 days. I think we could be on the verge of another one.
yeah. I mean, if we
I
are
mean,
talking about the Bank of Japan's decision on carry trade and trying to explain the economy, it's a bad situation for us. But I think it is also, just very quickly, in a moment where things get difficult or tough, it is also a time for both campaigns, but particularly I think the Democratic campaign for Harris, to draw a contrast with Trump and to explain in a forward-looking basis, okay, situation feels bad right now, but this is what it looks like looking forward with Trump. This is what it looks like looking forward with the Harris campaign. I think there are contrasts to draw,
yeah.
and that's where they'll lean.
But both sides big advantages. Not everything's going great for Trump, because of the timing. We haven't talked about the Georgia rally and the nightmare for many Republicans of Donald Trump attacking Governor Kemp. But I will so Trump has some real problems. But I will say, if you're in Mar-a-Lago, you look at the vice president. She's got two choices now. She can either defend the Biden-Harris record on the economy and forever wars, or she can use her rhetorical gifts to explain her position on how to be a good steward of a good economy and how to not have forever wars. And I think Mar-a-Lago likes those two options, and she's going to have to do one or both, and it's a challenge. All right, get everybody. Go ahead, Sean, and then we're going to bring people in.
I just said it's really easy. Trump's got a great talking point about just there was lack of chaos that existed for 4 years, whether it was Russia invading another. You're shaking your head, Tim, but I would just say that whether they can take credit for or not, it's a talking point, and I think they can contrast that with the current events, and that's something that I think a lot of people might find reassuring. Is say, you may not like me, you may not like whatever, but for 4 years we didn't have this stuff going on.
Yeah. Okay. Bring people in. Cindy, you're going to be first again. Please keep the chat as well as whatever you say when you're brought on in the spirit of two-way. Spirited discussion's great, disagreement's great, but it should be civil, and it should be about teaching and learning and understanding and peace, love, and understanding rather than any sort of negativity or attack. Cindy, where are you? Who are you supporting in the presidential, and what's on your mind?
I'm in Indiana, and I'm supporting Harris. I wanted to participate. I'm excited about this. So
welcome.
I wanted to remind people who remind the Dems that Indiana may be in play, and that we did vote for Obama in 2008. And Also, we voted for Bernie in the 2016 primary, and we don't like to be told how to vote. And I just also wanted to bring up that we didn't like how Pence was treated, and that I feel Indiana is very much in play, and we've got 11 electoral votes.
Okay, Cindy, let me ask you a couple questions, and then and thank you for participating. One is, do you think Vice President Harris is the favorite now to win the election?
Well, I think it's up in the air, but
Okay.
I strongly feel that she has a chance.
Okay,
And
and if
it's
she asked you,
exciting.
sorry, if
Go
she asked
ahead.
you for one piece of it, if she called you and said, Cindy, I appreciate your support, give me one piece of advice on how to maximize my chances of winning 270 electoral votes, what would you tell her?
Oh, well, again, I feel like there's some states that are out there that are in play that we aren't focusing on. I was involved with local politics and stopped being involved back in 2016. And I've seen it's really disturbing, but in my county, I was a county council rep for a term, but in my county, the only Democrat that was running this year was a surveyor. I mean, that really has a
Yeah,
chance. All the other elected officials are Republicans.
yeah.
And I just feel like, the energy that she's displayed, keep it going,
Okay.
reach out
Yeah,
to people
Cindy,
that
thank you.
you wouldn't normally reach out to.
Okay, Cindy, that's great. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Guys, is it possible that other states are in play because Harris brings something different to the ticket or not?
I think so. I want to know who that surveyor is because I think that's the next Pete Buttigieg story. So I will get that name. But no, I mean, like, look, if you look at polling, I think what she's done is just bring some states back into the fold within the margin of error or winning through the Sun Belt, North Carolina, Georgia. So I think, yeah, the map is different for Harris.
I think if
Sean?
any, it may have made Virginia a little easier now for them. Obviously, Maine, some of the places that I was hoping would get expanded. So anyway, I'm just saying, it may have brought it back to where it was, but it hasn't expanded it.
All right. Sir, who you've been brought on camera, please tell us your name, who you're supporting. No, just kidding. Mr. Speaker, thanks for joining us. We'd love to just hear your thoughts on Josh Shapiro, on the Middle East, on the economy, whatever you want to address. And thanks for joining.
Well, two totally different topics just for a minute. And I have found these last couple of two-ways very, very helpful in getting me to think about stuff Clist and I might not have thought about without listening to you guys. One, I do think we could be at the edge of the kind of events which transform everything. And I think if you think back to the fall of France and the rise of Wilkie in 1940, think about the series of crises that Jimmy Carter couldn't cope with, including the Iranian hostage crisis. If you end up in a series of these things, both the economy, for example, being affected. I mean, if there's a significant war in the Middle East, it's going to directly affect our economy through the price of oil. And it's also going to scare people because the next round between Iran and Israel is likely to be very violent on a scale that we don't associate with how things are going. So, one, there are big things out there that could shape everything in a way we don't understand. Two, I think the interesting question here, and you all have sort of touched on this, is about Vice President Harris. This is her first really big test. Now, I think if she wants to, she can impose Shapiro on the convention and she can force orderliness. And that just takes a strong whip organization. And she can basically minimize the amount of noise and the amount of difficulty. But it requires an iron willed, when I am president, I will remember whatever you're doing. So if you have any hope of my ever answering your phone call, shut up. Now, done correctly, as Richard Nixon used to teach us, you can have iron control in ways that are amazing. I think Shapiro is the only rational choice. if she picks the governor of Minnesota, she has gone to the left. I mean, Bernie Sanders just endorsed him. Now, the idea that what Harris really needs to do is prove she's more liberal strikes me as insane. And I don't see any choice other than Shapiro. Plus, as somebody said on your two-way last night, when now that it's there, now that Shapiro's a possibility, to not accept him will inevitably lead to a sense of anti-Semitism and to victory by the anti-Semites in the Democratic Party. And so I think she's in a box, and I'll be very surprised if she doesn't impose him on the party, no matter what the left thinks.
Yeah. So in 2008, we had an economic crisis that proved to be a leadership test for Barack Obama and John McCain. And Senator Obama was seen as doing better in reacting to that. What do you think, Mr. Speaker, Donald Trump needs to do now? Does he just need to go on Truth Social, or should he come on camera and react to this stuff? How should he try to assert that he's more qualified on these two crises?
If you remember, John McCain called for a meeting in Washington, came to the meeting and had nothing to say. I mean,
yes, I do remember that.
And by the way, just before the crisis, McCain was actually ahead by 3 because the energy issue was working and Obama couldn't figure out an answer to it. So it's a different kind of history depending on A, whether or not the collapse occurred, and B, whether or not McCain was able to pivot, which he couldn't. So I think that's a factor here. But I think that Trump's position, and I almost called in the other night because I was listening, and it occurred to me that what people don't get yet is we are a very long way from the election. In the age of television, the first votes are mid-September, by the way, in Pennsylvania. But we're a long way from the election. And Trump is going to gradually come to grips with the reality that he doesn't have the election he wanted. And that's why you're seeing all this floundering around, is he had a perfect election. It was going to work. He knew he was going to beat Biden. Everything was terrific. He had a miraculous survival of an assassination attempt. He had a great convention. And then on Sunday, it all blew up. And he has not yet come to grips with that, okay, it's over. Now let's go to the new game. He will get to the new game. The new game, I think, is very simple. And it's just 2 things. She really is a liberal, and she really is going to flip-flop. And all I have to ask people is, when you watch her switch her position, for example, on fracking, do you think she means it? Or do you think she means what she said for 20 years? And I think it then becomes a question of the 2 classic character issues. And all Trump has to say is, hey, when I dealt with Kim Jong-un, it worked. When I dealt with Putin, it worked. When I dealt with Xi Jinping, it worked. I actually did all this. I'm not some guy applying as an apprentice. And these clowns don't have a clue what they're doing. I mean, I think
Mr. Speaker,
it's that simple.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. Awesome. We very much appreciate always your participation. Guys, what do you think about the question? Should Trump be on camera responding? Barack Obama proved his chops in the eyes of many voters on the crisis by being super visible. Should Trump be visible or just stay back?
I mean, I guess to the speaker's point, part of the big question here is whether or not Trump can do those things. Can Trump actually come to grips with the reality that he has a different election that he needs to run a different strategy on, not say racist things, and communicate in the way that he needs to? And I think I'm confident as a Democrat saying that I don't think that he can, putting him on camera in a crisis. He has never really been viewed in any crisis as a calming force. He is someone that people have managed chaos around. And so I think putting him in a situation, if things are to explode, I don't know anyone whose blood pressure goes down, putting him on camera. I mean, Sean will surely disagree.
Sean, should he be out or not?
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, it doesn't matter what, he will be out. I mean, that's the reality. He's going to go out and speak. He's not
on camera, not just Truth Social.
No, I think he'll give an interview of some sort. If he doesn't have a public event, he will speak on camera in some way, shape, or form. And I think the question is, and I think this is what the speaker brought up, and Tim kind of, is how much of that is scripted, if you will, talking points, and how much of it is going off. But
But let me just be more granular, okay? So there's one thing to say, well, he's got a rally tomorrow. We'll throw in a few lines and he'll riff on the economy and on Israel. It's another to do what some campaigns might do in this situation: set up some flags, set up a nice dignified thing, put on a tie, walk out, try to provide a contrast. So is that what he should be doing, or just?
I think that's you're talking about a traditional model that Trump has never been part of. So it may be an expanded aspect of the rally. It may be an interview that focuses on this, but he will address it. I think he'll address it on camera, but it's not going to be through a traditional mechanism. He may even do a video, but I don't see him standing there in front of a podium with a bunch of flags behind him.
Okay, here we go. Brian, tell everybody where you're from, who you're supporting, and go ahead.
Thank you, Mark. So I'm in Chester County, Pennsylvania. I am a Trump supporter. However, I voted for Clinton in 2016. My view changed.
Who'd you vote for in 2020, Brian?
I voted for Trump in 2020.
Oh, okay. And you're voting for him this time?
I'm sorry, I missed it.
And you're voting for him this time too?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I changed during the Brett Kavanaugh hearing where I said, the personality of Trump was repulsive to me, but then I saw, whoa, wait, this is the other choice when the Democrats came at Kavanaugh in that unfair way. And that changed my mind. And so, but I'm really center right. I would like to hear from Harris to see who she is. And I think the only way to do that is some sort of a crucible, somebody, a journalist actually, interviewing her and giving her hard questions. I'm open to hear what she has to say. I know what I hear from the media on her, and I know the talking points that I hear her say, but I really don't know who she is. And I think that's the only way that we'd be able to hear that. But I'd like to talk about—
what do you think of, sorry, go ahead.
Just the Shapiro thing. It's not my party, but I'm here in Pennsylvania. I think the potential problem with Shapiro is how much he really is on the plus side in Pennsylvania. He ran against one of the most flawed candidates in Mastriano. I mean, he was terrible. I couldn't vote for him. I'm a Republican. So I don't know exactly how much of the plus side he is in PA relative to, as Mark, you described.
Do you think he's been a good governor?
He's been fine. He's really, he's not, I guess I pay more attention to national politics. He's not really on my radar, frankly.
So, guys, we have here in Brian a Clinton Trump voter. Have at him.
So Brian, I want to see Trump say it and do tomorrow when this whole thing goes.
I'm sorry, Sean?
Both in terms of world issues that may blow up and economic issues that are probably going to happen in 3 minutes. What do you want to see President Trump do to reassure you?
Well, I'd pick up on what the former speaker said is, I've been there and I've done that, and look at what I've done on the world stage. All this stuff about he's going to be the next whatever disaster. I don't want to use any individual name from history, but he's been there for 4 years, and the place didn't fall apart. I think that's a really strong thing that he can say and present. It's evidence.
That's right.
It might not affect how you decide who you're voting for. It sounds like you're going to vote for Trump, but acquaintances, friends, family members, what's the chatter around Shapiro as a potential VP? Are there people in your world who say, if she picks him, that's a great pick, I might lean towards that ticket? No,
not my world. He's not on my radar or the people that I associate with's radar. It's really, it might be just my group, but Shapiro is a non-factor, really.
Brian, who are you voting for in your Senate race?
Whoever is running against Casey.
Dave McCormick.
Dave McCormick, yeah.
Yeah. Why don't you like
because
Casey?
I'm anti-Casey. I don't like his.
Why is that?
For the same reasons why I wouldn't be voting for Biden or Harris.
Right. Okay. Let me ask you 3 quick questions, Brian, because we're getting close to the end here. Number one, have the Democrats increased their chances of winning Pennsylvania by switching from Biden to Harris, in your view?
Yes, absolutely.
Have they increased their chances of winning the election overall by switching from Biden to Harris?
Yeah, absolutely. But it's not saying a whole lot.
Okay. And what if Vice President Harris called you and said, Brian, I want to win your vote? What would you ask her to talk about?
Well, no, what I would ask her to do is go on and speak with, you name a hard, tough, fair. Sure, Mark, I'll take you.
Okay.
Interview her. Go call Mark Halpern and have a 60-minute interview.
Maybe be an
and then
expanded.
she may or may not get my vote, but she'd have my respect.
Be on an expanded edition of the morning meeting. Brian, thank you. Come back often. How'd you hear about two-way?
Probably from Twitter, Mark.
Okay, Brian, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
So guys, tomorrow's episode is going to be pretty good. I'm looking forward to it. Lots going on. Tonight at 6 o'clock, I'll be back with another two-way.
Can I ask one quick?
Good people. Yeah, go ahead. Of course.
Is there any world in which any of us see her punting this decision?
No, because the DNC's teed up. They got to do their roll call with that.
I'm with you. You asked the question earlier about the tour. I just want to make sure we're all that it has to happen today, right?
Yeah. I mean, you're right. It doesn't absolutely have to happen, but I, and her inclination might be to delay it, but my sense is they're about to announce it in a very eventful day. But if they announce a pick, they want to get great coverage and a lot of coverage, and it could literally be the third or fourth story on the news tonight, even if she makes the announcement, which is unusual, obviously. Not since Dick Lugar's presidential campaign announcement was dwarfed have we seen such an intersection between a major political announcement and national security. Speaking of Indiana. Tim, if it's Waltz, I'm still buying you some funnel cakes at the fair or whatever.
Yeah.
Thanks everybody for watching.
State Fair. Yes.
Exactly. Thanks everybody for watching. We'll be back. The three of us will be back tomorrow, 9 a.m. Eastern time morning meeting. I'll see you at 6 o'clock tonight on YouTube and on two-way. And we appreciate Speaker Gingrich's participation and everybody else. Thank you.